You know, something's wrong when a crime victim loses her health insurance, punished because she was raped. Christina Turner says two men at a Fort Lauderdale bar slipped her a drug in her drink. Next thing she knew, she's lying on the side of the road. Her doctor then had prescribed her a month's worth of anti-HIV medicine, but then her insurance dropped her. She tried other companies, but they apparently saw those HIV meds, wouldn't touch her. So that's how you treat a rape victim? Our sister network, CNN, first got word of her story from the Huffington Post Investigative Fund, so we wanted to dig deeper on this one as we call out wrong when we see it. We'll take your calls, 1-877-TEL-HLN's the number. And joining us to talk about it, the victim in this, Christina Turner. And get this, another twist, she's also a health insurance agent. Also joining us, Chip Merlin, trial attorney and an insurance litigator in Tampa. Christina, let's start with you. Again, it's quite a story to tell. But first off, I mean, that was a life-altering event. How are you doing? This is, what, 7 years later now?
I'm actually doing very well now, thank you so much. Because of the actual therapy that I went through and the antidepressants that I needed and the preventative HIV medication, I'm doing very, very well. I'm also a rape counselor now, trying to help other victims so that this doesn't happen to them. Well,
we applaud you for that.
Thank you.
To turn what you did to help counsel and comfort others. Kudos to you on that front.
Thank you.
Well, let's get to... you know, we don't want to make you relive that day, but let's pick it up after the fact. So at the time, your doctor prescribes, is it anti-HIV medications?
That's correct, for 1 month.
Okay.
Because there was no way to tell if the attacker wore a condom because it was a drug rape.
Okay. So then what happens with the insurance company? Because you're a health insurance agent yourself.
Absolutely.
You think you're fine, right?
Absolutely, and I'm an independent contractor, okay, so I have to go through individual carrier. I was with my carrier for a while. Next thing I know, they dropped my coverage. I had submitted my anti-HIV medications for reimbursement because I was under a PPO, so I had to pay for them out of pocket. Once I submitted it, the rape happened in November. I submitted it in December, and I paid my premiums on time the first of every month. January I paid, February I paid. Mid-March I get a termination notice stating that my coverage had lapsed for non-payment of premium. To this day, those two checks have never been cashed. And so I went to the head of the company. I went all the way up to the head of the company trying to explain to these strangers. After being through this traumatic event, I had to explain to strangers that I didn't even know that I was raped and what was going on, and you know, this is what's happening to me right now, that I don't actually have AIDS. But they said because the coverage was already terminated, that I in fact had to go two to 3 years testing HIV-free, and because I was in therapy and on antidepressants, I would be uninsurable. So I went to the head of the company. They basically said, sorry, this happened. If you can't show that your checks were cashed, which is the last thing on my mind is balancing my checkbook at this time, because I'm an independent contractor and I meet strangers every day.
And you didn't do anything different with your payment. Let's get that out there.
I did nothing different with my payment. And the fact that I received my January and my February payment, why didn't I get my 30-day notice of cancellation, which I was supposed to get? The next thing I saw was a 60-day notice. Once it's past 60 days on an individual coverage, you cannot be reinstated unless you go through the pre-qualifying medical, which I did not meet the requirements at that time. So then, being an agent, I know how the health insurance industry works. So at that point, I contacted many different companies that I dealt with, and depending on the company I spoke with, I presented it as a hypothetical.
Right.
Because if you submit a paper application and get denied, it's a black mark on you. Because the companies later can say, have you ever been denied before? And then you have to explain, and they can rate you or decline you. So I submitted it. I called underwriters with the hypothetical question. This is what I have. I have a rape victim. She was on anti-HIV medications for a month, and now she's in counseling and on antidepressants to try and get through this. And they said, depending on the company, once again, 2 to 3 years, HIV-free, and she has to be out of counseling and not on antidepressants before we will take her. So I was re-victimized again, and not only...
Many times, have to retell the story.
Many times re-victimized, and then taking my livelihood away because I was a health insurance agent.
Okay. Chip, how can an insurance company do this?
You know, Mike, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that it's a lot more profitable to take people's premiums and then not pay when the claims come in or cancel them when you have this problem This has been going on in this country for a long time. There have been congressional studies that have showed half of the major health insurance companies use incidents of domestic violence to deny coverage or otherwise get out of having coverage for these poor victims. And what she's describing is going on all the time.
Wow.
Many times these people are placed into getting group coverage, and then they have to stay with one employer during that period of time just so they have the benefits.
Yeah, and because, you know, and from your vantage point, Christina, just that loophole with the payment, that was the end to get you out, right?
That's exactly right. And what they told me is that they were very sorry for my situation, but if I couldn't prove that I sent it certified mail or given them proof of a cash check, there was nothing they could do for me.
Okay, guys, let's take a quick break. We'll soak this one in. Want to hear from you, your thoughts, your comments. Has it happened to you? We'll take your calls. Number 1-877, tell HLN. Welcome back to Prime News on HLN, continuing with the heart-wrenching story of Christina Turner. She's a rape victim. She needs anti-HIV medications and therapy, and through all that, somehow her insurance company dropped her. When she needed them most, she was dropped. We're taking your calls, 1-877, tell HLN. All right, Christina, how hard did you fight? Did you ever think, okay, I'm going to be reinstated here? What is right, and it's going to happen for me?
You have no idea. Anybody that knows me knows I have a hard head, and when I have my mind set to something, I'm going to get it. And I went to the top of the top of the top of that company. It took me 2 to 3 days, and they all said the same thing. And then when I went to all the other insurance companies, I was just begging them, and I did have a choice of going into the Florida high-risk insurance pool at their open enrollment, but it was almost the cost of my rent. So it was like rent or health insurance. You know, what a combination is that for you to have to choose from, number one. And one of the main reasons my story, I feel, is so important is that being in the insurance field for 27 years, I hear a dial tone.
No, we're good. I hear you.
In my ear.
Do you hear me?
Are we back?
Oh, we lost Christina. Okay, we'll try and get reestablished contact with Christina. We have Chip with us. We've got a phone call. Jeff's with us in North Carolina. Hey, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, to me, this shows, again, why they don't want to have any kind of insurance reform, because it benefits the insurance companies just to leave it just the way it is, where they can take in the money from the people without paying the customers back.
Yeah, you know, Jeff, we have to all be able to agree on this, that this is just egregious, that something like this would happen. A rape victim denied insurance, found some loophole, you know, hide the payment for a couple of months and use that as a ruse to cut her. And Chip, you talked about it. Chip Merlin is with us, an attorney, practices insurance litigation. Chip, don't the insurance companies ever look at a circumstance like Christina's and have a heart and make the right call?
Mike, you hit it right on the head, because it's looking at circumstances like this, and if what she can show is that in other circumstances they have allowed reinstatement, so long as it is not based upon sexual abuse and things like that, she might be able to prove a violation of the Florida Unfair Insurance Trade Practices Act, which shows that she was discriminated against because she did not get that reconsideration as a result of the sexual assault.
Right. Well, how hard is it to fight an individual like Christina fighting a giant insurance company?
Well, what most people need to know, 41 states now have laws that help protect people just like Christina, and if they aren't getting through the insurance company, they should call their insurance commissioners about this, as well as various coalitions that have now been set up to help victims of sexual abuse. And most of the time, these are women and children, and that's the reason why we need these laws.
Yeah, I mean, a victim to be victimized again, as Christina so eloquently put, it's just, it's unconscionable. Christina, we have you back.
Yes.
Thanks again for coming on. We have time to say goodbye, and thank you for sharing your story. 10 seconds if you want to give us a closing word.
Yeah, I just want to let you know the reason I'm here is my story is a small story, much a bigger picture. And we started a national campaign with the National Women's Law Center in D.C. last week. And I would encourage everybody to go to www.awomanisnotapreexistingcondition.com
okay.
and write your state, local representatives.
Okay, thanks again, Chip. Christina, thank you as well.